broadcast network, AfterBuzz TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AfterBuzz TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Welcome back once again, true believers, to your X-Files Season 10 ABTV After Show. As always, please join the conversation by following the hashtag ABTV X-Files, or by joining us in the live chat. I am, as always, Lex Michael, all over social media at the Lex Michael, and I am here with...
I am Lucretia Lyon, guys, so if you can spell my name right, it's LACRETIA LYON, and you can find me anywhere because there's only one.
And you can find me at the rave.
We're opening the light show, which is really exciting.
I love it. That's right, we're in the party. Get the glow sticks out, everybody. Get your pacifiers. We're getting Create Beef.
So we are. Wait, who are you?
I'm Happy Go Jackie on Twitter. Yes.
He is clearly high.
So we are talking about episode 3, Mulder and Scully Meet the Weremonster. This was an episode full of really wonderful moments, a lot of really fun Easter eggs and callbacks to X-Files of our past, and we are going to pick it apart. We're going to get right to the bottom of every bit of it. We're going to Tad O'Malley the hell out of this episode. Yes. But before we do that, I wanted to ask the both of you what your feelings were overall about this episode, especially when compared to the 2 episodes of this run that we have seen so far.
Well, I couldn't stop laughing the entire time, every bit, and I've actually seen it, 3 times now, and I'm still laughing all the way through. I'm starting to get annoying, right? Because I'll laugh before it starts.
Well, for me, I guess expectations were really high compared to, because I know Lucretia got a chance to see this early, and then just reviews that I read, most reviewers seem to have only seen the first and third episodes. And so while they had their issues with the first episode, the third one is people that felt like that is more of the X-Files that we know and love back from the heyday. So I came in with high expectations, and for the most part, they were pretty well met.
For the most part, they were pretty okay. So it sounds like there's some stuff that we can definitely dig into a little bit. I, for one, I loved this episode. This episode made me very, very happy. I will go so far as to say, even if the remainder of this run is objectively terrible, they will have spent every penny well, because we got this hour of television tonight. This episode made me really, really, really happy. But okay, it is obviously worth noting that it was written and directed by Darren Morgan, who is, of course, an X-Files veteran. He's, I would say, if you're going to make a Mount Rushmore of X-Files creatives,
Yes.
it's what? I would say probably Chris Carter, the Morgan brothers, maybe James Wong, I think,
Yeah,
would be
James
the other
Wong.
face.
Yeah.
But Darren Morgan, I think it is also worth noting, his intro into the world of the X-Files was playing the Fluke Man on in the episode The Host in season 2, and then he would go on to write some of what I believe are the best episodes of the entire run. He wrote Humbug. He wrote Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose, War of the Coprophages. He wrote Jose Chung's From Outer Space, and all very, very funny pieces of television with moments of, I think, poignancy, especially in the case of Clyde Bruckman, a very funny episode, but also an incredibly poignant, touching human story. And we got moments, I think, little hints of that Darren Morgan in tonight's episode, but this episode, I think, really tipped over into embracing the full-on absurdity that can exist in this world.
Yeah, and what I also liked about it, too, is that it just really really embraced the fact that it's been, since 2001 or so, since we've seen the series, and time has moved on for Mulder, and it's just time to, as he says, he's a middle-aged man, and you can't help but look back on your life and figure out, have you done everything you've wanted to do? Do you regret what you've been doing? where are you right now? Have you accomplished what you wanted to do? And so I feel like that was kind of cool to see Mulder kind of just checking in at the state of his life right now.
Yeah, I loved it being Mulder's midlife crisis episode. I mean, at least we get the resolution where he's back to himself as it goes on. But yeah, I just love the sad sack Mulder. Oh God, the internet disproved everything I believed in the beginning, throwing the files and the pictures and throwing darts as his I Want to Believe poster. That was just brilliant because it was good to see Mulder be that for an episode.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We talked a little bit, I think, both on mic and off mic, about how I believe Fox shuffled the order of some of these episodes. So the episode that was aired as episode 2, Founder's Mutation, was intended to be the 5th episode. So coming into that show off of the premiere, where Mulder was effectively told, well, everything that you've spent the entire run of this series believing is entirely false. To see the jump to Founder's Mutation seemed a little bit jarring. It seemed like quite a leap. Whereas I thought seeing him where we find him at the opening of this episode, going through all of these old case files and finding that so many of these monsters he had been chasing, these cases turned out to have incredibly mundane resolutions. And yeah, I love that it really continues this question for Mulder of, well, what have I been doing with my life? Is this a life wasted?
And I feel like if the show hadn't, I mean, the conspiracy element of that and the mythology is such a heavy part of the show. But I feel like this episode, in many ways, I would have loved to see this be the first episode. Because I feel like in just a smaller focus there, it just really brings up everything that we want in terms of Mulder. This would have been a great place for them to start up. All this time had passed, Mulder's back in the X-Files. It would have been a great way to start small and then maybe build up into the mythology later on in this 6-part event.
Yeah, I could definitely see it playing out that way. I do love that in this episode, because of the way we find Mulder at the beginning, for a good portion of at least the first half of the episode, it almost feels as though the traditional roles have been flipped.
Yes.
So it's Scully who shows up and says, Mulder, we have another case, and there's a monster in it. And when they arrive to investigate the scene, it's Mulder who's being very level-headed and very skeptical as Scully keeps throwing outlandish detail after outlandish detail at him. And this happens a number of times throughout the show, and I thought that was a really fun way to play on their dynamic as we understood it.
Yeah, even when they're doing the autopsy, and she's like, "Oh, I forgot how much I miss cases like this."
Yeah, Scully really seemed like she was having fun. I mean, even when the roles get reversed back to their normal after Mulder's, speech, talking to himself, essentially, where she's like, no, you're back crap crazy. But yeah, up until that point, she was kind of his role. Like, yeah, it could be a monster, Mulder, come on.
Yes. So I do. Speaking of, so we know this is a case with a monster in it, and we jumped over the cold opening as we were talking about Mulder, but we open with these paint huffing stoners played by Tyler Labine and Nicole Parker Smith, and this is the first of a number of callbacks in this episode to previous X-Files installments from seasons past. These two characters appeared in a pair of episodes together. One was War of the Coprophages, which was also written by Darren Morgan, and the other was Quagmire, which it is known he did uncredited rewrites on. So it's nice to see them establishing a certain amount of continuity. Mm-hmm. But it opens with this creature, this interesting, scaly, spiny creature jumping around in the woods and, by all appearances, attacking people.
Yes.
Yes, but he was framed.
And this again is there's layer upon layer to this story, and I love as the episode goes, we start peeling pieces back and we see certain events from multiple perspectives, which is a lot of fun. Once we move out of the agent's initial investigation of the crime scene, we see this same creature run up to a transgender woman who whacks the creature with her handbag. And the agents question this transgender woman who describes a creature which has horns and
but only 2 eyes.
Only 2 eyes, which is a big sticking point in this episode. Yeah. You don't want to, I suppose, racially profile your lizard creatures.
That's racist.
That's true. Well, I mean, I figured it even starts off when they're doing the initial investigation of the crime scene, where when Scully just shows them the photos of the two witnesses, he's just like, Mulder is just so over, like, oh, just like the heavy sigh that he lets it at this point. And then just when he hits the point, it's like, I guarantee you when we get to the end of this, you'll find out it's only 2 eyes. on this, and that's everybody keeps focusing. It's two eyes, two eyes, two eyes.
Which again, this becomes a big thing. But I also like Mulder's exasperation at the whole concept of profiling serial killers. His line, I believe, is, "I gave up profiling before I gave up monsters," which to me, we talked a little bit. I think I believe it was last week about how jaded Mulder has very understandably become.
Yes, and then he also has a dream of like, that's how I'd like to go out, just being a naked hiker and just being attacked by wolves. Like when he's like, that's how I'd like to go out.
And so it's interesting that you bring that up, because there are a couple of very specific references in this episode to Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose. In that episode, Clyde Bruckman tells Mulder that the way he will actually eventually die is via autoerotic asphyxiation. A far cry from being taken apart by a gaggle of wild animals. Also, though, another line that gets referenced, and I'm jumping ahead, I feel like we'll jump around a bit, but Scully, very offhand in a joking way, reminds Mulder, "Oh, don't you remember? I'm immortal," which is a reference to that same episode where she asks Clyde Bruckman, "How do I die?" and he responds, "You don't." So it is after they briefly question this transgender woman that they meet Pasha. Now, I had to look up Pasha's name because I don't recall the character being referenced by name in this episode, but he is played by the wonderful Kumail Nanjiani,
who's actually partially responsible, according to Michelle NCIS Fanatic Live, for getting the X-Files revival. She said that on his podcast, and he talked to Chris Carter, that's part of what started it all, so that's really great.
Yeah, he's been doing a podcast called the X-Files Files for a little while, and I've listened to it. It's phenomenal. He essentially breaks down the series one or two episodes at a time, frequently with a guest, and he's also been able to get interviews with a number of creatives responsible for bringing us a lot of these episodes. But yeah, apparently he was in many ways responsible for what is the word I'm looking for? Stirring up additional interest in the X-Files again, which helped propel this new series into development. So it's great to see him being able to come full circle in that sense and actually get to play a fairly pivotal role, I would say.
Yes.
Pasha, when we meet him, is how do you describe Pasha?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it just seems like he's just feel like he's great with small animals, but anything bigger than a small animal or a dog, then he just starts freaking out.
And of course, Mulder said maybe you should question your career decision.
Yes.
He's like, no, my life.
He questions his entire life. So Mulder can't get his camera app to work.
Which I love that you see Mulder dealing with an app. It was just, that's fantastic.
And the camera just keeps going off, and we almost forgot to mention the trainee crack line. That was pretty funny. Just before this scene, like, yeah, I'm on crack. Like, what do you expect? I'm a hooker.
It's like,
I just love that. Yeah.
It's like, the police aren't going to believe anything that she says. They think I'm on crack. Well, are you? Yeah. Which is, again, like so many wonderful but very quick comedic
lines.
beats in this episode. But so Mulder's camera app is going insane, and they have another encounter with this creature who's running around apparently in his underwear, which is the first sign that maybe all is not quite as it appears to be with this creature.
Yeah, I love how Scully's the one to ask boxers or briefs. and the funny thing about the way that David Duchovny plays every little line is he just has that straight face, and I just wonder how he did it. I mean, he just shows his phenomenal acting skills, how he was the straight man in this episode, always with that look on his face. Every little weird comment thrown out there, nothing.
Yeah.
It's so fun to see him like that.
Well, since you're bringing up Duchovny's performance in this episode, I wanted to ask you guys how you feel about his work tonight compared to his work in the two previous episodes, because I certainly have thoughts, but I wanted to get yours.
Yeah, to me, I mean, as good as he was in the first two episodes, this one, I mean, it was a complete 180 from who he normally is for half the episode. And so, yeah, I really like to see that, him be more the straight man, like the skeptic. And so it was really just interesting to see a different side of Mulder.
No, and I would agree with Scully when she says in the episode, like, this is how I like my Mulder.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's this is Duchovny, the way he performed it in there, the way, I mean, just the material. It's just, this is the interpretation of Mulder that I enjoyed most. I don't need all the mythology and conspiracy and all that stuff. More focus on things like this, and just the unusual is more my speed.
I agree with both of you completely, and I love, like, to me, Mulder and Duchovny as Mulder was always at his best when, yes, he was, as always, relentlessly pursuing the truth and trying to uncover what is actually going on in any given situation, but there is and was, and I believe should be, a genuine excitement about doing so. Like, yes, when you come to the conspiracy stuff, there's the stakes are crazy high, and he wants to find out what happened to his sister, and he wants to stop the alien colonization, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there is a certain childlike wonder that I think was always present in the character of Fox Mulder as he relates to all of these paranormal concepts. And I felt like, as much as I enjoyed Duchovny in the first 2 episodes, I feel like that was very much missing. And I feel like we got it back in a big, big way tonight, and that really excited me.
Yeah, especially with that final scene where he's like, I want to believe, and then he changes, and just the look on his face of just a sigh of relief that his life hasn't been a waste.
Oh, dude, like, I'm not gonna lie, like, I'll go on record right now saying I watched this episode twice tonight, and both times the ending, the final moments of this episode almost made me cry for exactly the reason that you're describing.
Yeah, because it's just the look on his face of, I have faith again.
Yeah, I mean, you want to feel like I think anybody wants to feel like their life's pursuit is worth it, and that they've spent the enormous amount of time that they spent on something has yielded something and matters. And so it was great at the end for somebody that's been doubting it for the majority of the episode to kind of get that validation that, yes, what you've been doing does count for something.
Yeah, and like you were saying, like, I think this is our Mulder, and it felt so nice, and so it made me really happy. Like, oh, we got our Mulder back, you know, like that was really, really exciting to me. So back to this malfunctioning camera and the creature chasing them around the truck. So Kumail Nanjiani joins Mulder between these trucks, and the creature just runs at them, knocks them both over, and then vanishes. Mulder has blood on him. The net, Pasha's net has been torn, but Pasha too seems completely unharmed, if shaken. They follow the trail of the creature to a porta potty. They see him. We, the audience, sees this creature run into this porta potty and close the door, and so they immediately go to the porta potty, open it up, and it's actor Rhys Darby.
Yes,
Yeah, I love Rhys Darby.
Who I think a lot of people probably would recognize from Flight of the Conchords. I mean, he works a bunch, but I think that was certainly where I first came to know him. But yeah, Rhys Darby in the porta potty, asking for a little bit of privacy. So we meet Rhys Darby, and his name, his assumed identity is Guy Mann.
Clever.
name.
And I want to just generally, because we're obviously, I think we've all seen this episode, everybody on our panel certainly, but I think everybody listening has probably seen it already, so, you know, we can full spoiler-filled conversation about Rhys Darby and his work in this episode. Before we get crazy specific, general thoughts.
I loved it. I thought it was great. So just his performance there, just as the turns and kind of revelations happen with what that character is and what you think is happening, and then when you find out what has really happened with that character, I thought it was an interesting take.
Yeah, I really liked. I mean, you kind of expected when it became known that the monster was him. You're like, yeah, this isn't gonna be. He's a killer. I mean, obviously, Rhys Darby is this fun, guy, and you're like, how's this gonna turn out? And I really loved how it was a whole metaphor about, we are the monsters. It was a human who did all this, not this, were lizard. Yeah.
Were-lizard. Yeah, the term were-lizard is something that I'm really, really pleased has been introduced into the public vernacular at this point. I fully expect a whole swath of were-lizard fiction to emerge in the future as a subgenre. So Mulder, Scully is looking at one of the victims, and Mulder is showing her all of these essentially useless photos that his camera app has taken. And the part of the exchange that really struck me the most was that he says, it's a creature, not a monster. I'm not talking about a Sasquatch, but look, this is a close up. Look at his skin. And Scully says maybe it was a mangy Sasquatch. And now I'm going to be pretty disappointed if nobody within the next several months starts a punk band called Mangy Sasquatch.
Yeah, we'll start Googling it now or getting into punk rock.
Yeah, I feel like if no one does it, you've let us all down. We've all let each other down. So guys, let's prop each other up, Mangy Sasquatch. But they look at the video, and Mulder points out that this creature shot blood out of its eyes. And Scully's like, what?
That's not possible. Yeah.
Yeah, and then of course Mulder uses the internet, which is bad for him apparently, according to Scully, and he's like, "Nah, this lizard right here does that. That's found in nature." I just loved how he just like burned her almost. It's like, "Nah, science."
But that is the moment where they're having this conversation, and we alluded to it earlier, where he points out that it looks like Scully's really enjoying herself, and Scully says, "I'd almost forgotten how much fun these cases can be." So we are at a motel later on, and Mulder is awakened by shouting. He hears somebody shouting "monster," and of course, being Fox Mulder, you hear somebody shouting "monster." Of course, you bolt
he's like, "What's
upright,
going
and you run to the source of the shouting. He meets the motel manager. Now, I don't know if you guys caught it. Was that rubbing alcohol?
Yeah.
The motel
yeah.
manager was.
Yep.
That's a serious alcoholic there. I've seen people do it, but usually they'd had a few too many.
Yeah, so this dude is generally very shifty, tries to play the whole thing off, and Mulder goes and investigates this other motel room, which has been trashed. He finds a smashed mirror, he finds a bottle of what we come to find out are antipsychotics, and then he sees this jackalope head on the floor. And he plays with the wall a little bit, wall opens. And of course, if you're Fox Mulder, you open a wall, of course you're going to go in.
Of course.
So he finds this secret passage where you can look through the animal heads of nearly every room, I assume every room, in the motel.
And of course, when he looks in Scully's room, because he's a perv too, he looks
sure.
through a fox. Clever.
See, I didn't even catch that. That was good. You also mentioned, it does. Mulder has always been a little pervy. I think his Mulder's porn fascination, let's call it, has been well documented on a number of occasions.
Very true.
So it does seem like the type of action.
Those red underwear.
Yeah, we see the Speedo.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably one of my favorite lines that he says to the hotel manager. When one checks into an establishment such as this, you expect the manager to be a peeping Tom.
It's like, no, I'm not going to turn you in.
So he ends up back in the manager's office and finally, reveals himself to be a Fed. And the manager tells him this story, prefacing it with, "You're not going to believe the story." Tells him the story about, which does open with him peeping on Mulder, who's sleeping in his red Speedo on top of the sheets, by the way, which I thought was like I could almost imagine Mulder going, "Well, creepy motel, in case anyone's looking," takes all his gear off, gets down to the Speedo, just on top of the sheets, just in case.
And I was thinking he just thought it was gross, so he didn't want to sleep underneath the covers. But yeah, you took it to a new level. I like that.
I totally. My head canon is now that was Mulder's intention.
Yeah. It was like, they're going to see my junk.
So the motel manager tells Mulder this story about seeing this guest transform.
Yeah, and I thought the effects shots for that initial transformation that you see happening in the mirror, I thought that was the weakest part of the effects work in this episode for sure.
So I don't disagree with you, but there was something so wonderfully and specifically 90s about the effects work in this episode that I would almost wonder whether or not that was intentional.
Yeah, because it seemed much more like makeup, which I prefer, versus the CGI. So, because I, love, the 90s like everybody else my age. But yeah, to me, it was really more of a throwback transformation. I don't want to see CGI.
No,
I want
but
to see that.
There was the kind of salute to old Wolfman transformations back there when he changes from Were Lizard to just regular Rhys Darby, where I thought that was just a nice little homage to that sort of effects work in there when they kind of transformed it back to human form. Yeah, I love that, just kind of taking them to the separate stages and stuff. And I just thought this one was like, I'm seeing the seam showing, and this doesn't seem like you could do one more pass, do a little more rendering on this effect.
I could definitely see that, especially when we saw in the premiere a lot of the effects work, and a lot of critics have taken a number of shots at that episode, but I think the effects work in that show felt incredibly modern and incredibly solid, especially on a television budget. So if we're comparing this run only to this run, then I absolutely agree. But I'm going, in a world where we're still doing the 90s opening titles, you know what I mean? This feels very much to me, effects included, more so even than the other two episodes. You could watch a season 3, season 4 episode of X-Files and jump right to this one. And with the exception of, because we talked a little bit about how TV production has changed and gotten a little more polished in the 2 decades since X-Files premiered. But I feel like with the slight additional polish aside, the slight glossiness, you could feel like you didn't miss a step. You know what I mean?
That's very true.
Yeah. So that I don't know. I dug that aspect of it.
Yeah, and Rodney De La Cruz makes a really good point that I didn't notice because it's a little before my time, but Darby was dressed like Kolchak, the Night Stalker. And I'm like, well, that's kind of a cool little thing I didn't know.
Yeah, because if you're, you know, if you're listening and you aren't aware, like the X-Files, the part of the original intent of the X-Files was to homage shows like Kolchak the Night Stalker. So we go to this conversation after Mulder hears this story between Mulder and Scully, and it was we alluded to it before, and it's exactly what I was talking about. It's Mulder being so excited at the prospect of the unknown, whether or not he fully buys into it, and then is able to preemptively speak for Scully.
Yes.
Which I love because these characters have known each other for such a long time. So of course it makes total sense that Mulder would be able to call out every objection Scully would potentially make before she has an opportunity to make it. There were so many wonderful relationship moments between the two of them in this episode as well. I wanted to talk with you guys a little bit because of how like seriously it's like childishly happy it made me in this episode about their relationship, because we've seen it obviously the last episode, Founder's Mutation, dealt a great deal with the son that they had to give up. So you got a lot of very heavy relationship stuff, but this is Mulder and Scully to me.
Yes, I mean, and I think this is a Mulder-centric episode for sure. So I mean, Scully is pretty much just kind of left to the sidelines for the majority of this episode. I mean, there are nice little touchdowns between the two of them, but it's largely Mulder's journey through this episode of trying to figure out, is there still a reason for me to still believe it's something as much as I want to do? And that's, I mean, so that, I guess that's understandable because it's a Mulder-centric episode, and it's one thing to forgive that when it's a 22-episode season over the course of 9 seasons, but when it's only 6 episodes, you're like, I want to get as much Scully as I can as well, too.
I definitely see your point. It did. I could definitely see that Scully did feel a bit sidelined in favor of giving Mulder's arc the full focus.
But to me, she had some of the better lines in the episode. I mean, just like in this scene, she gets the last word, because this was my favorite scene because it was that turning point back to, like she said, this is the Mulder that I like. And, so he's going on and on, filling in for her, and she's just sitting there looking at him, and then he's like, you believe me? No, you're back crap crazy. I mean, it's like, that was one of the best lines, because, she's been kind of like, not as skeptical in this episode, and it's like, no, she's still Dana Scully. She's still a scientist. She's still going to call you out on these crazy ideas without proof.
Yeah, like I think they had a really good script to work with as a foundation, but I love the way that Gillian Anderson is able to take every bit of, even if it's coal that she's handed, and just go, meh, turn it into a performance diamond. Like she crushed, I thought, every moment. And she had a lot of interesting notes to play in this episode, even though, it was not necessarily Scully's story. We'll certainly come back around to some of that in a minute. I wanted to talk about Mulder meeting with this psychiatrist who he was able to find because of the prescription bottle. Because this conversation is, to me, the point at which the episode tips fully over into embracing its absurdity. Specifically, I'm thinking about apparently Guy Mann has talked to the psychiatrist, and the mythology associated with the lizard creature is that it can only be killed by being stabbed with a green lance in the appendix. And Mulder
Very specific.
Yeah, and Mulder asks, why? And the doctor essentially goes, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's like all these old stories just have like penetration of some sort in their midst there. So yeah, it's always talking about like their own sexual inadequacies and stuff, their own impotence.
And so
I didn't read that in Interpretation of Dreams, but sure.
But it is interesting too. Like you forget too. Like he references the werewolf stories where it's always penetration with a silver bullet, or the vampire stories where it's always penetration with a wooden stake. And
it's always about sex. I have a degree in psychology, and that's pretty much what it comes down to.
Yeah, and so of course just picking green lance in the appendix completely arbitrarily, it's like, okay, sure, why not? Also tells Mulder that the prescribed advice he gave Guy Mann was to take walks through a cemetery.
Yes. This guy, I don't know where he found this guy, but man, I can't imagine he gets a lot of patience.
Well, I wonder, because of what we come to learn about Guy and what is guiding his decisions and the way he approaches these decisions that he's making, I can't imagine he spent too much time trying out different psychiatrists.
Very true.
Yeah, I mean, he just became aware human, I guess, now, a few days ago. And then the first thing you do when you're a human is get a job. And then of course, you hate your jobs there. You got to go to the psychiatrist. So there was maybe like a 48-hour period, you know? And he doesn't know what Google is yet.
No, he doesn't. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Or more world-specific, Finder Spider.
Finder Spider,
has
yeah.
not started using Finder Spider, presumably, but he does work at a smartphone store called Smartphones Is Us.
I love that.
And Scully finds him there, but apparently he flips out and he flees. And Mulder finds him at the cemetery. And the cemetery, again, is where Mulder gets Guy's entire story. But before we even jump into that, we referenced the fact that this episode was full of Easter eggs. Two very, very big specific ones were the names on the headstones that we spent a good deal of time focusing on. I think you guys probably caught those names,
Yes.
right?
Kim Manor.
And Jack Hardy.
Yeah, so Kim Manners, for those in the audience who don't know, and if you don't know, shame on you, but Kim Manners was the guy who directed more episodes of The X-Files than any other person. He directed a whopping 52 episodes of The X-Files, beginning with Season 2's Des Hand des Verlettes, all the way through what was, until recently, the series finale, the final episode of Season 9, The Truth. And this dude had this crazy, expansive career. He'd been directing television since the 70s. He directed episodes of Charlie's Angels, Star Trek The Next Generation, Wise Guy, Mission Impossible, Baywatch, 21 Jump Street, Briscoe County Jr. He had directed episodes of Supernatural.
I love Briscoe County Jr.
So, like, the dude was working right up until he passed away. He passed away from lung cancer. And Jack Hardy was, in addition to being generally a beloved member of the Vancouver film community, was also an assistant director on both The X-Files and also Millennium, which was another Chris Carter show. So it was nice to see the two of them get a little bit of love here, a little bit of a memorial shout out. And I also liked that the, the epigraph on Kim Manners' headstone reads, and I quote, "Let's kick it in the ass," which was apparently a frequent saying of his, a mannerism, if you will.
Oh, wow. Puns there.
I'm not proud of that one, guys. I'm really not proud of that one. So, Guy Mann tries to get Mulder to kill him.
Yeah. Oh, no. I love that. When he's like, I dropped my weapon.
Tries to get Mulder to kill him, and when Mulder refuses, finally starts to tell Mulder his story. And his story is bonkers.
Yes. I mean, to find out that you totally flip the perspective on the typical werewolf kind of myth story there, where instead of it's a man turned into a monster, it's a monster who gets bit by a human and then turns into a man.
Yeah, the reveal at the very beginning of this story is that he was just minding his own business when Pasha, the animal control guy, bit him and another man, killed the other man, and then, flees. Next morning, Guy discovers he has transformed into a person.
And all of a sudden cares about, not being naked. So he's got to put on clothes.
Yeah, because that's the first thing you do as a person is you take some clothes. And luckily for him, there's dead bodies lying all around in that woods.
This I loved so much, because you see in werewolf stories, traditionally, somebody's bitten by the werewolf. When the moon is full, they wolf out. And of course, all of their instincts are funneled through wolf brain, essentially, and they're driven by the instincts of in many cases, a rabid animal. Whereas now, Guy, who was up until this point a lizard creature, is now a were-human, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, his instincts are being funneled through person brain, and suddenly he's consumed by and driven by these very mundane, ordinary concerns and fears, like, yeah, I'm naked. I shouldn't be naked. I need to go get a job. Things like that.
I need to save for retirement and get a mortgage. Oh, and sidebar, Lex, because I know you like to hear compliments. Aaron Robinson said that was the pun of all puns.
Oh, thank you. I'm not proud of it. So Guy Mann goes, he gets his job at the smartphone store, and I love that he's like, I don't know what I'm talking about. They don't know what I'm talking about. It's great. Goes, gets fast food, checks into the motel, watches porn.
Oh, yes.
Lots of porn.
Because I mean, that's my list, right? Like when my consciousness flipped on at the age of, I don't know, 24, like that was the first thing. I was like, okay, gotta get dressed, gotta go get a smartphone job, gotta get some hamburgers, and yeah, probably watch porn in a seedy motel for a couple of days. And so I wanted to ask you, because I was a little bit fuzzy, and maybe that's part of the point, a little bit fuzzy on what triggers the transformations, because it seemed to me, now, probably not important, but it seemed to me a little bit unclear, and I wanted to ask both of you if you caught what specifically it was.
I don't know if there ever really was, because when Mulder tries to put at least some internal logic into it, like, well, it wasn't daytime when you transformed, and he's just like, no, guys, like, there is no logic to this. So I feel like there wasn't really any clear-cut triggers to any of these transformations out of the way, unless you saw something like Lucretia.
No, I was just going to point out that line as well, where, I mean, it pretty much explains, because he thought it was the moon, but then he's like, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what I'm saying, Mulder. There's no external logic to this. Like, it was so funny. He's like, I have no idea what's going on. And I think that was the really funny part, because, yeah, you have no idea what triggered it. And who knows? He's supposed to go into hibernation, but he's still maybe a human. We have no idea what's going to happen with this guy.
Well, right. Sure, because as he said, he's got the human ability to BS his way out of any situation.
Yeah.
Right. I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't anything that I should have caught that I didn't.
No.
But again, like you say, they make a very specific point of saying not only is there no internal logic, there's no external logic to end it, which again, I really liked. So he, once he transforms back into a human, he decides, I'm going to get a puppy.
Yeah, of course.
Because that's what we do as humans. We love non-humans, and that's what keeps us sane. I mean, I know. I think about it, too. I'm like, yeah, I really only like my dog and cat.
So did you guys catch the Easter egg / reference that is the name of the dog?
Daggoo.
No.
All right, so Daggoo is one of the names of the harpooners, one of the harpooners on the Pequod in Moby Dick. So the direct connection there is obviously, and Scully's late lamented former puppy Queequeg that was introduced in Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose was eventually eaten by an alligator, also named after a harpooner on the Pequod. But this is something that goes all the way back to season 1 in Beyond the Sea, which was co-written by Darren's brother Glenn, where they make a big deal out of this relationship between Scully and her father, where he would call her Starbuck, who was the first mate, the chief mate character on the same ship. So I just thought that was a nice little callback. But so Daggoo goes missing. Poor Daggoo.
Yeah, I guess the maid left the door open. Yeah, I was expecting that to have more payoff, other than just, I guess, at the end we see him safe and sound at the animal control shelter.
And Scully takes him. Yeah.
Which did make me feel better, because I'm the type of person, I don't know how you guys feel about it one way or the other, but my attitude is, I know this is all fake, but you do whatever you want to any human character, any horrible, violent end that they can meet. Just don't hurt the dog.
Yeah.
I know, I'm the same way. It's like, I love that when Scully takes the dog, looks around, see if anybody's there, and just takes it. It's like, yay, you get a happy ending. Hopefully this one doesn't get eaten by an alligator.
But so, in his search for the dog, he's running around. He sees Pasha again, doing his thing, and I'm not... Apparently, so Scully says the victims were strangled.
Yeah.
Whatever Pasha was doing looked a little bit more involved than strangulation to me.
Well, I guess maybe strangle them and then starts chowing down on their necks.
Yeah, as she said, she found DNA on the tool. I don't know what it's called for dog catchers, but yeah, the little hook. Apparently, he strangled them and then he would bite their necks, like, for some reason.
So this is what eventually he sees a person doing this to another person, and this is finally, he doesn't even realize he changed back to his lizard form, I think. This is what finally makes him go, no, I'm done. I'm casting off all of the auspices, the veneer of humanity. I'm taking the clothes away, starts running around, and this is where he bumps into the transgender woman, finally bumps back into Mulder and Scully and Pasha, which we saw from their perspective earlier. They have what is maybe a slightly awkward moment in this episode for me was the brief exchange about the transgender woman.
Yes, that was so funny. He's like, oh, I'll do that then. They cut off your genitals. Okay, no.
And I also just wondered, because seeing that scene now on the other side from his point of view, when he sees, he strips off his clothes and runs, But then when we see him in that scene, he runs around the truck and then hides right in the porta potty right there. And then all of a sudden he has all his clothes back. I'm like, did he go back and run through that field and pick up all his clothes that he dropped off and then come running back? That the whole time and geography of that scene kind of a little confusing when I saw it from this point of view.
But see, Frank, you're looking for the internal logic.
That's right.
Yeah,
You're looking
there
for
is no internal logic.
There's no external logic.
That is right.
And that's exactly, this is about the point in the episode where that exchange actually happens. But then he lies about having sex with Scully in the back of the phone store.
I mean, who
that's
wouldn't?
great.
She walked in the store. Every guy's gonna make up that story. I love how he's like, yeah, apparently I'm really good in the sack.
No, you're not. That didn't happen.
He's like,
didn't
that didn't happen.
But I also love too, like his instincts are being funneled through person brain, and he has this urge, this uncontrollable urge to lie about his sex life in human form. I just want to say I love Gillian Anderson.
Me too.
And she can play so many different types of scenes so wonderfully. And I love this absolutely absurd scene.
Oh, yes.
She just goes for it.
Definitely. She's having a lot of fun in that scene, for sure.
Also, a guy references his friend George, who was killed by a jackalope.
Yeah, apparently they are real. I love when he argues with Mulder about that. I'm like, that was really funny. Because because he only comes around every 10,000 years. Or he's like, I don't know. Maybe jackalopes did exist at one point.
Yeah.
And so as we exit out of this conversation and we dive headlong into the end of this episode, this is really where it's like, okay, we've completely given up even trying to establish a base reality here, because then we establish that not only is this a lizard creature / were person, he can also accurately quote the first folio version of Hamlet and speak French.
I love that.
Yes.
Like, yeah, in that 48 hours, I mean, he somehow read Hamlet, the original version.
He found the folio version as well.
Plus, I also like that everybody's suit coats also have this just pocket where you can put bottles in there. Everybody's got bottles that they can just pull out of their suit coats.
You don't have one of those?
No,
coats?
I'm missing
I got
out.
like 3.
So Mulder drinks himself into a stupor by this gravestone, is awoken by his X-Files theme ringtone.
That was really one of my favorite things there. I think I'm going to have to now change mine to that.
So Scully has tracked Pasha, having figured out that Pasha is the person that they're looking for, to the animal control shelter. Pasha attacks her. Mulder calls for backup. By the time they get there, Scully's handled it.
Oh, yeah. You don't mess around. She's an FBI agent. Come on, she can kick a lot of ass.
Yeah.
But I do like that where it's just Mulder never wants to stay on the phone long enough to find out any crucial bits of information. Like when she has the blood lab results, it's like he hangs up the phone, doesn't want to listen. Mulder, I've got to. Okay.
And yeah, and they basically they reference that immediately after that call, and he gets off the phone. It's like, I need backup at the animal control shelter. Where's the
Where's that?
animal control shelter?
And I loved the fact that he's like, this is the second time you just went in at a murder suspect, without any backup. And she's like, I got it. And, I just loved how she was just so confident. And he's just like taken aback. It's like, she's a strong woman, Mulder. She can take care of herself.
That's right. And this when she throws out the I'm immortal line. So, yeah.
Yes, and of course, Pasha had this whole speech prepared for when he was taken in, and of course, doesn't get to make the speech.
Yes.
Scully referencing the earlier conversation. You've seen one serial killer, you've seen them all.
Yeah, I love that because he was just so down and out in the beginning when he said it, and then I love she reiterates it just, for that thing. Serial killers are boring when it comes to the X-Files.
So then we get this final conversation, the last scene of the episode between Mulder and Guy, where Mulder says to Guy, we caught the killer, and based on what we discovered, you may have been telling the truth. And they have this exchange, which I think is really touching, that, it's been Guy's been having a really rough time. And it's great that he met somebody like Mulder who could, at the very least, maybe sympathize a bit.
Yes.
And then talks about how he's going to go hibernate for 10,000 years.
Yes.
Which, again, what?
But he doesn't really know because he doesn't understand our construct of time. He's still just BSing his way through it, I guess. So.
No, but I also like it just like a nod just to the old episodes where when Mulder could see something fantastical, but when you want to try to actually get real concrete proof, there's always some reason that prevents them from getting real tangible evidence of this. So he's going to go hibernate for 10,000 years. Okay, well, I guess there's a chance to really prove that this creature still exists.
Yes, concrete proof, absolutely. But I would argue Mulder gets something even better. Guy says it was nice to meet you, puts out his hand. Mulder shakes his hand and then sees the lizard form.
Yeah.
And as Guy recedes, Mulder smiles. And this was the moment that both times I watched it almost made me well up, because Mulder gets his faith back. which was really nice to see because that dude could use it.
Yes.
Mulder got his groove back. That's what they should have titled it. But I did love it. Was Mulder and Scully meet the were lizard?
Yeah, well, again, guys, fully expecting from the internet a full swath of were lizard subfiction in the days to come. Really soon, we're going to have to wrap it up. That was that episode, though. That is Mulder and Scully meet the were-monster. Really quick, I want to get final thoughts from you guys, but I also want to move into predictions for what is coming up.
For me, briefly, like I said at the beginning, I really wish that the first two episodes didn't exist and the season started. Predictions. That the season started with this episode. I thought this would have been a great starting point for 6 more episodes about stuff.
Yeah, I totally
stuff.
get this is why when I went to the pre-screener that they showed this one and the first one. Because, yeah, the first one's basically grabbing all the new people that may not understand some of these dynamics. But even then, if you'd showed in this episode, how many people would have watched the show? I mean, they're like, I have no idea what's going on, but this is funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, this show made me very, 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 very happy. That's I wasn't counting. Somebody will tell me on the internet how many berries that was. What do you guys think we can expect from next week's episode? Is an episode entitled Home Again, which certainly brings to mind specific connotations in the X-Files universe.
Yes, I'm shocked that after this episode they are going dark, but you could tell. I mean, it was very horror influence. I'm kind of hoping for some really good horror cameos since I'm a horror nut. But yeah, being home again, I'm thinking it's going to be like the complete opposite of this one. Dark. Yeah.
I mean, and it feels like we're touching on just like different types of genres of X-File episodes that we've liked throughout the series run. We're kind of getting, other than like our 2 bookend kind of mythology-heavy episodes, the other 4 are just going to touch on different kind of flavors of X-Files episodes that we've known and loved throughout the seasons. Yeah,
I'm very excited to see what they do. We are halfway through this run of episodes already. It feels already all too brief. I do want to mention one more time, actually, throw it over to you guys, one of you, either one. Remind our audience why next week is particularly special for us.
Oh, well, as we're talking about like a nice horror movie and Home Again, the title for that, then who was the writer of the first original Home episode that we always like creeps us out so much? None other than
Glenn Morgan.
Yes, Mr. Glenn Morgan himself is going to be talking about that episode and the X-Files in general in studio with us next week at our usual time. So guys, please tweet your questions for Glenn Morgan at us. Please join us in the live chat to throw your questions at him that way. We would love to have you be a part of the conversation because I think we're all pretty excited about it.
Definitely.
I think that's going to do it for us tonight, though. So until next week, Lucretia, Frank, where can people find you on the internet?
Well, again, if you can spell my name right, it's LACRETIALYON. Find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever.
And you can find me on Twitter at HappyGoJackie. And I'll see you at the rave.
And I am Lex Michael, all over social media at the Lex Michael. Tad O'Malley is out there. Until next week, guys, we will see you then.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.